And good evening, Cuse Nation, and welcome to the Upstate Orange podcast, recorded live inside the FingerLakes1.com studios in downtown Seneca Falls, New York. It's Thursday, February 6, 2014, and tonight we're going to be talking about the number one ranked and still undefeated 22-0 Syracuse Orange with 2 wins in the Dome this week, one of them in front of 35,446 people in the Dome, an instant classic. We'll have some Syracuse basketball trivia and a whole lot more. I'm Jim Sinacropi, in studio alongside Matt Verke. How you doing tonight, Verk?
Good, Jim. How are you?
And also joining us in studio tonight, the mouth of the South, Dave Barnick.
Hey, good evening, guys.
Glad to have you back, Dave. And you went to both these games this week, right?
I was fortunate enough to go to both of them, including that thriller Saturday.
2 games in 3 days, hiking up that hill, huh?
Yeah, I paid the price, but you gotta bite the bullet for the team, right?
Yeah, well worth it. And of course, via telephone in Cincinnati, our resident college basketball guru, the professor, Brad Connor. How you doing, Brad?
Good evening, gentlemen. Good. How are we doing tonight?
Good. I just came up with that moniker, the professor. I don't know if that works or not for you. The accountant.
I like it. Stick with it.
Well, before we get into it, guys, how fantastic it was everything surrounding Saturday's game against Duke, especially the final score. But, Dave, you were in the Dome. Just what was it like? What was the atmosphere?
It was pretty magical. And, after they went back and forth so many times, you just had to smile and go with it. Obviously, all the fans wanted their team to win. But, you just had to put your hats off to both squads for the caliber of play and the drama. It was outstanding.
And Verk, how about you? What do you take from that game? Best game ever? Or?
In the Dome? Yeah, it's up there with them. I don't know if it had the significance of some of the other games, maybe, but the first Duke-Syracuse ACC matchup, it was a very well-played game, very few turnovers, and both teams played extremely well offensively, and it was a fun game to watch. Just when you think Syracuse hasn't won, Tyler Thornton comes in, makes 3 threes in a row, and then it goes to overtime, and it was a really fun game to watch.
Brad, where'd you watch the game?
I watched the game in my basement with the sound alternating between loud and off because I couldn't take Vital for much more than small doses, but it was one of the better games I can recall in the last probably 10 years.
Well, we'll talk about maybe where that game ranks in the all-time games played in the Dome and a whole lot more. So excited for this week's show, fellas. A ton to talk about, so let's get right into it. The Upstate Orange podcast is brought to you by Generations Bank, with locations in Auburn, Geneva, Phelps, Seneca Falls, Union Springs, and Waterloo. Be sure to check out their mobile banking app or visit them online at mygenbank.com. And Seneca Meadows, responsible waste management for the next generation. Learn more online at senecameadows.com. And by Midday, Miris and Ricky, your hometown personal injury attorneys. If you've been injured and deserve compensation, call the Finger Lakes Personal Injury Hotline at 315-568-0911. That's 315-568-0911. All right, undefeated. A full-day infomercial on ESPN Saturday for Syracuse, and Cooney goes for 33 against Notre Dame. Let's talk about it with our Big 5 questions. Question 1, guys. Was it a foul on Rack's block or Rakeem Christmas's block of Rodney Hood, the one everybody's talking about? Jason Williams says it was a foul. Half of America thinks it was. The other half doesn't think it was. I thought it was a great play by Rakeem Christmas. To me, he got ball. He didn't jump into Hood. Hood was jumping into him. Rack went straight up, got ball. Noah score. Syracuse wins. What do you guys think about the foul, Dave?
Well, they didn't call it, so it wasn't a foul.
There you go.
But frankly, you'd hate to see a game decided on that. It could have been called a foul, of course. There was definite contact. A lot of ball, too, though, I thought, Matt.
Yeah, I would. I don't think it was a foul personally. I thought that Rakeem got a lot of ball, and then I thought Hood kind of fouled through into his arm. And on a play like that late in the game, I've seen a lot worse not called. Obviously, being a Syracuse fan, you might be a little biased, but when it happened live, I didn't think it was a foul. I was surprised that Hood tried to dunk that. He was pretty far out, and it would have been a pretty amazing play. But even if he gets fouled, there's still 15 seconds to go in the game. Syracuse would have had a shot there.
And maybe your bold prediction last week of Ennis hitting the game winner would have came true.
Maybe 10 seconds to go or 8 seconds to go or whatever. But, it wasn't called. And, I thought Krzyzewski did a great job of not even talking about it in his post-game press conference. And, just move on from there.
It's such a great game anyway. I have to fit in sometime along the line that two people occupying the seats directly behind us at the Dome, two young ladies, Duke fans, fully clad.
Brave.
And the one had a shrill shriek that not only was annoying to everybody within 5 rows, but I swear when I watched the replay the next day, I could hear her a couple times.
You probably
and
could.
they paid $700 for that pair of seats.
Wow, and this was kind of that corner?
Yeah, right behind myself.
$350 each or
Correct.
something? Yeah, okay, well, hey, a lot of people got season tickets and then went ahead and sold their, sold that one ticket to pay for their whole package, which some people used to do that for the Georgetown game. I say if you're getting season tickets, you're going to the best game.
I told, and not to belabor the point, but I told the one young girl, it was 4.6 seconds left, we're up by 1, 2 foul shots by Ennis, and she thought the game was over. I said, listen, we're probably going to hit these 2 shots, and you're going to hit a 3 to send it to overtime.
Sure
Next thing I know, this Duke fan was giving me a big bear hug.
Oh, boy, I don't know if I'd like that.
Yes, you would have.
So, Brad, was that a foul? Did Rakeem Christmas foul Rodney Hood?
I agree with what Burke said. He got a lot more ball than he got arm. He got ball first. Hood's arm caromed into Christmas's arm afterwards, his hand afterwards. The reality is either team would have complained about the outcome of that call, regardless of how it was called. It was just one of those bang-bang plays that you're not going to get consensus on.
So a good non-call.
Obviously, we're happy about it because it sort of worked Syracuse's way. You could make an argument that Duke had reason to be upset, but frankly, I don't think it's a strong one.
And I think that it's just maybe the defining moment where Rakeem Christmas has finally come of age. Huge play. And the Syracuse big men, the one thing that Boeheim hates the most with young Syracuse big men is that they tend to jump at people to block shots instead of just standing straight up and down. And the one thing to me about that non-call, why it was a good non-call, is because Christmas went straight up in the air, and that's by the definition of the rule. Hood's jumping into him. Christmas disciplined enough at that point in the game to stay vertical and make that play. I just think that it was a real coming of age for Rakeem Christmas.
Well, Jim, it was Christmas time in Syracuse.
It sure was. It sure was. So question number 2, guys, tonight. Does C.J. Fair's performance against Duke elevate him to the status of an all-time Orange great? And that status to me would be, when you're talking about forwards, Derek Coleman, John Wallace, Carmelo Anthony. Or is he still down? Is he a Todd Bergen now? Is it the next step down? And he's got work to do here as a senior season, but he's already got 1 Final Four in his belt, which is something that Carmelo, Coleman, and Wallace all had. Maybe he'll get 2, but Verk, do you think that CJ's performance against Duke elevates him into that class?
I don't think it goes with those guys. He had a great game. Obviously, he has a good chance to be ACC Player of the Year. But one game doesn't make you a legend. I don't think. I think if you look at those guys, you're talking about a full season, or Coleman and Wallace 4-year careers. Carmelo had the national championship. Now if he wins the national championship and carries the team, then obviously he might get up in that all-time great. But he had a great game, and it was the best he's ever played. And but then he came back against Notre Dame and goes 2 for 13, and we're not saying he's one of the worst players in Syracuse history after that. So,
sure, yeah.
I don't think that one game. He's a nice, solid, steady player, but he didn't play a lot as a freshman. Had a decent sophomore year, came along last year, and having a good, solid senior year.
Yeah, I think his postseason run this year will determine that. Back-to-back Final Fours is certainly a nice opportunity to add to your resume. Brad, what do you think? This was actually a question that you requested that we include in the Big Five, so I'm going to assume you have a good take on this one.
Yeah, I mean, when I think of my favorite Syracuse players, he's easily in the top 10, if not the top 5. Does it elevate him into the status of one of the greats on the basis of this game? Probably not. It certainly elevates him in my own love for the player, because of what he does and what he brings, and just what we've seen from him for 4 years. I mean, we love the guy. Each one of us will admit that, and he's probably, for each of us, one of our favorite players in all of our history of following Syracuse basketball. But does it elevate him to an all-time great? Probably not on this basis. Like Burke said, there's a long career to evaluate guys over. If he leads this team to a Final Four, then maybe we have a different conversation. I'm not sure he's quite there yet.
Certainly one of the all-time great performances, though, in a big game, wouldn't you say, Dave?
Yeah, it really was. And, it may not have elevated him to super orange status as yet, but it probably elevated his bank account in the minds of NBA scouts, at least from all accounts that I've heard. And it's an interesting question, because it reminds me a little of some players you just appreciate who are in baseball Hall of Fame borderline players, like a Paul O'Neill or a Dewey Evans for the Red Sox. Really excellent players, but not quite Hall of Fame, even though the fans really appreciate all their efforts and consistency, which he's given them, and so happy he came back for that senior year.
And you can love C.J. Fair more than Derek Coleman, and I think I might in a way. Although some of those Syracuse legends when I was a kid, you really are going to feel super fond of them, your whole life. But I agree. He's not there yet, but I think he'll have a chance to get there, to get to that John Wallace and that Derek Coleman and that Lawrence Moten level.
Trevor Cooney.
Trevor Cooney, when he's all said and done, that's another story.
The report card is incomplete, but favorable.
Yep, he's heading in the right direction. So,
I will tell you guys, he felt a lot. It felt very John Wallace-like, the performance that he brought on Saturday night. With the exception of what Grant did in the overtime, it felt like C.J. Fair really put this team on his shoulders in the same way that you would see John Wallace do in 1996. And if he could continue that through the tournament, for example, then, he places himself in the pantheon right alongside John Wallace.
And he's got a little more support, too, than Wallace had on that team. Wouldn't you say? Just looking at Jeremy Grant.
Yeah, this team is top to bottom a stronger team. There's no question about that.
Yeah, much more talent. I mean, they got a couple NBA players on this team, and on John's team it was pretty much him.
All right, let's move ahead to question number 3. We touched on it earlier. What was the greatest game ever played in the Carrier Dome? Was it that Duke game? You have any other games in mind? Brad, what do you think? Was that the greatest game ever played in the Carrier Dome?
No. And the reason I say that is because it was a regular season game in late January against the 17th ranked team in the country. And
in the Dome, though, we're talking about.
To me, it doesn't compare to when Syracuse beat Georgetown in overtime in 1990. Last game of the regular season, Derek Coleman's last game in the Carrier Dome. John Thompson gets thrown out.
3 technical fouls.
Georgetown clinches the Big East regular season championship. And I mean, to me, that game meant a lot more. That game was just as big nationally. You had 2 top 10 teams going in that game. This game didn't have 2 top 10 teams going. yeah, I think that game, for all the stakes of that game, was a bigger game than this one.
How about you, Dave? You've seen a few games in the Dome over your time.
When that question was asked, of course, I've also been privy to listen to what Boeheim said about it. He said it was.
Yeah.
And because he said even though that some of the games with the Pearl Washington Orangemen and the Thompson Georgetown teams, they may have had more NBA players on the court at one time, but they didn't have the caliber of play for that game with still several good NBA prospects. But one game that popped out in my head was when they played that, it might have been one of the very first Big East tournaments at the Dome, in which Ronnie Cycli, I thought, when they beat Villanova,
that was
and
Leo Routins.
it was triple overtime or something like
triple overtime. Leo Routins tipped it in
after broadcasting a Section 5 championship game. And I remember we stopped somewhere and watched this crazy finish from a fairly average Syracuse team that won. And they did not get into the tournament.
No, they ended up going to the final of the NIT and losing to either Tulsa or Tulane, one of the T teams, Tulane.
But it certainly was a game that a lot of people who weren't there years from now are going to say they were. The Duke game the other night, it was fantastic.
Verk, you think it was the best?
I don't, and just kind of agree with what Brad said, but I think it was a unbelievably well played game. Maybe both teams shot the ball well.
Not many turnovers,
and not a lot of turnovers. A very clean game. Back and forth, lead changes. They hit the three. But like Brad said, I think if Duke was ranked third in the country and this was late February, then in the big scheme of things, if Syracuse lost that game, they're tied for first in the ACC. Still number one in the country. It just and it's just not that long time rivalry with Duke as it was with a Georgetown or a St. John's or as back.
But part of what makes it great is it was the first one, and we'll have always won the first one, no matter what. They'll never, we always won that first ACC game against Duke. Duke's never won in the Carrier Dome against Syracuse. That'll be true for another year at least.
And the Krzyzewski-Boeheim relationship and history and record, 1,800 wins plus between them, or 1,900
And to me, that's what makes that game great and what made those Georgetown games great. It was the coaches. It was Thompson versus Boeheim. And so when I was looking at some of these great games, I thought of 2003, we beat Pittsburgh in overtime. Jeremy McNeil made 2 free throws. Terrible free throw shooter, but he knocked down those 2 at the end of the game. But that was Jamie Dixon, not quite on the same level, I guess, yet in his career. So
he might be if they played Syracuse all the time, right?
Well, if they only played Syracuse, but unfortunately for them, they never play Syracuse in the NCAA tournament, and they usually lose in the first round or second round. But best games in the Dome for me, that Leo Routins Big East tournament finals is a good one, but that was really ancient history at this point. Another one coming from that I actually really remember clearly, and probably the one win in the Dome that made me feel better than any other one, and even better than this Duke win, was when we beat Georgetown and when Georgetown was number 1 and Addison hoists the ball in the air at the end of the game, because that Georgetown team was so villainous. And I remember as a kid just thinking that we probably can't beat these guys. Who could beat these guys? Certainly not Raphael Addison, Pearl Washington. And so that game to me is probably number 1. And number 2 is going to be another Syracuse-Georgetown game. It's the game in 1990 when Billy Owens made the free throws to send it into overtime, and they won. And one of the things that made that game so great was that Thompson got tossed, and Syracuse fans hated John Thompson. I don't think Syracuse fans really hate Coach K. At least they certainly have a respect for him. Nobody respected Thompson, and nobody liked Thompson. And so that level to it.
Well, there was clear animosity between Boeheim and Thompson for many years, and just the opposite is true. The great amount of respect between the two, Boeheim and Krzyzewski, is, I think, enhanced the play the other night, actually.
And I enjoyed a photo of them meeting before the game at midcourt, hugging each other and kind of looking at each other. And you can see the people in the background taking cell phone pictures and just, really excited to see that moment. And that is a big part of it. Think about it. 2 winningest coaches in college basketball history, the 2 guys with the most wins, meeting at the Carrier Dome. This all goes to how great our program is at Syracuse, that would happen at Syracuse. Because first of all, you better have a coach with 900 wins, so we're lucky enough to. And then you got to play another coach, the other guy, and so it just doesn't happen too often. And now it's going to be a regular occurrence for the next several years, because I don't think Boeheim or Coach K are going anywhere, because I think they kind of like this thing.
Not from the way they were talking, and ESPN did that nice job on game day having the 2 together.
Yeah, that was a really good interview with Reese Davis. Yeah, no doubt. All right, let's move ahead to question number 4, which is Duke shot 36 3-pointers versus Syracuse. I went back and looked at all their games since the ACC season started, and every single one of them was 20 to 26. Most of them 20, 21, 22 threes. A couple games they had 26. But I'm like, geez, Coach K, we talk about how great Coach K is. So what's interesting to me is see how Coach K is going to game plan and play against Syracuse. And, he wasn't having much success going inside. Guys were getting in foul trouble. So next thing you know, his strategy is to just shoot 36 threes. Made 40% of them. We still win the game. What do you take, Verk, from that? Is that just Coach K's like the only way we can beat these guys is to shoot threes over the top of that zone?
Well, nobody plays Duke zone, first of all. So obviously, typically against the zone, you're going to get more 3-point looks. And honestly, Duke shoots more threes than most teams do anyway. They're kind of built for that. And they don't, besides Parker, they have no post game. So, I'm not surprised at all at how many threes they shot. And quite frankly, it was working. If you're going to shoot 40-something% from the 3-point line, it's like shooting over 50% from the 2. So, I think they took what Syracuse gave them. Syracuse blocked 9 shots, so going inside wasn't exactly working for them. And like I said earlier, they don't really have a much scoring inside as it is. They did manage to get 18 offensive rebounds. So I think they took, Syracuse did a poor job of finding shooters throughout that game at times.
Yeah, I was getting upset.
Tyler Thornton basically was wide open 3 straight times with, a couple minutes to go, which at that, Syracuse got up 7 or 8 points at one point, and Tyler Thornton, of all players, brings Duke right back into it. And really, Syracuse should have closed them out and won the game by 8, 9, 10 points, and, they allowed Thornton to get hot, and,
there's a lot of shooters out there, though. You can't just worry about 2 guys. There's 4 guys.
Yeah, typically, when you got Parker Hood and, who struggled.
And
Cook really struggled in that game.
He had open looks,
if
too.
If he played a little bit better, it could have been a different outcome. But Hood, he's a 44% 3-point shooter. And, Dawkins is 47, 48%. Every time he shot it, I thought I was going to go in with Dawkins. And Thornton was the one guy I really wasn't too worried about. And then he ends up hitting some big threes, which kind of added to the allure of the game. This Tyler Thornton, who's a senior, a captain, comes in a huge game and knocks down 3 threes. But, I don't think it was Coach K saying, hey, let's just shoot all threes. It was kind of what was open.
What do you think about Coach K's game plan, Brad?
It wasn't a surprise. They're always been a predominant 3-point shooting team. He recruits guys that are excellent shooters, and it was less of a surprise to see them come out and really try to attack that way. I think what we saw more than anything once Parker went out and Jefferson to a lesser degree, when those guys started to go to the bench with foul trouble, and then when they were out of the game, that's all they did, and that's all they had was just a perimeter game, and there was no real, with the exception of an occasional drive by Hood, there was no interior presence whatsoever. They just wanted to launch threes. I don't even think they shot a 2-pointer or made a 2-pointer in regulation. I could be wrong, or in overtime rather. All they did was shoot threes, it seemed. And so I think the less they had of Parker and Jefferson, it was inevitable that they were just going to just launch threes, and that's what they did, and it seemed to work. And heck, they were able to keep it close and had a chance even to win the game if if Hood's dunk goes down and some things change late, they could have won with that strategy. So I don't think that it will be any different when Syracuse goes down there.
Dave, were you surprised at the amount of threes?
Well, I was surprised that it seemed that every time they really needed one, they just kept going in. But what also is remarkable is that their two-shot field goal percentage, or 2-point field goal percentage, was identical. They shot 15 for 36 from 2 and from 3. And, of course, they moved it inside in order to, and worked it back, and the ball movement was good to create some openings from 3, and at times we were a little slow to adjust, and you were wishing you had Carter Williams' longer arms back out there. But
it is. I thought about that myself too. We've talked about before how much we love Tyler Ennis, and I'd take him over Carter Williams. At least I've argued that with these guys on the show. But boy, he could use an extra couple inches against teams like Duke.
You wonder if Benajay should have been in there in the last minute or so defensively too. But it was, you can, hindsight's always 20/20. It was just a great game. It's pretty tough to be critical.
All right, question number 5. It looks like Cooney's out of a slump, if he was even in a slump, but he wasn't shooting at the clip he was, in December. But does that 33-point outburst change your opinion of Cooney? Like, do you view him now as a stud, a big-time scorer, a guy that we can lean on, a guy who maybe when he's next year in his junior year and senior year is like the leading scorer on the team and maybe a All-American candidate, a first-team, second-team All-American preseason type of guy? I mean, what do you think, Dave?
Oh, I don't see him elevated to that level. But what Jerry McNamara said that he thought was particularly huge was he missed his first 3 of the second half, and one of the Syracuse players, it might have been Grant or Christmas, got the offensive rebound, dished it back to him, and without hesitation, he shot and scored. And that's what shooters do. They shoot, whether they go on a roll. He might be 1 for 8 against Clemson. Thank goodness he was hot the other night because nobody else was in double figures, which was in itself pretty incredible.
Yeah. Brad, you looking at Cooney any different on Tuesday morning than you were Monday?
Not really. It was one game. I hate to make knee-jerk reactions to one game. He played a fantastic game. I could just as easily see him going 1 for 9 in the next game and not needing that production because we've got it from other guys. I think this team has an uncanny knack of lifting. One guy lifts up the others when the others aren't necessarily performing. And if it's not Cooney, it's Fair or it's Ennis or it's Grant, and they've got so many weapons. And I think Cooney, whether it was consciously or not, saw that the rest of the guys were struggling and really got locked in. And maybe that's not necessary in some of the other games, and maybe he approaches it a little bit differently. I don't know, but it's hard to argue with what he was able to do when he was locked in. It'd be great to see that at every game. I'm not sure I'm expecting that yet.
No, and Sutherland hit 9 against Arkansas last year, and McNamara had 9. Was it against BYU that he had 9? That's a record.
In the tournament. That's the tournament game.
So that's a Syracuse record. And it seemed like Cooney was going to get a couple more maybe, and break the record. But, no, you can't count on anybody making 9 threes game after game. But I don't view Cooney much different than I view Cooney as a better player than Sutherland. And I view Cooney as I don't want to say equal to McNamara because McNamara had that intangible, and McNamara as a freshman was in the national championship game hitting 5 threes. So,
6.
So it's hard to.
He had some games, Jim, Cooney this year, where I thought when it wasn't going, he was really forcing it and aiming rather than just letting it fly. And the other night, though, he just that shot to end the first half was a phenomenal shot. He was feeling it.
Verk, now you've never been somebody you consider a Cooney fan, you've come around to. I mean, you used to think maybe Cooney shouldn't even be playing. But
Yeah,
I obviously come around from that. But
he's impressed me this year, and he's made great strides. But he had a great game. I still don't. I want to see it in a big time game. He didn't play bad against Duke. He didn't get a lot of shots off, but I still think he's a guy who, if Tyler Ennis isn't there, or he's got great guys around him. And he kind of feeds off that. He's a great role player, and he plays his role well. He's knocking down threes at a pretty good clip this year. I still don't try. There's been guys when Andy Rounds was there. Some of those guys when they were wide open, they shot a three. I felt pretty confident it was going in. I still don't feel that with Cooney. Yes, he does have hot stretches, but he also had, in ACC play, he's had 4 or 5 games in a row where he's been, 1 for 5, 2 for 7, and he gets pretty good looks because obviously they got to guard pretty much everybody else on the team pretty tightly as well. So when he's on the floor though, you got to guard him, which is big for spacing and things of that nature. You got to have that shooter, and this team especially they don't have a lot of 3-point guys. So I think there's even a little bit more pressure on Cooney. In the past, like last year at Sutherland and Trish, Carter Williams occasionally would make some threes, but you always had 2 maybe 3 guys who could shoot the ball. Fair does shoot a little bit this year, but he's the one guy who can stretch that defense. And Duke went zone in that game, and Boeheim called timeout and put Cooney back in.
Yeah.
He's that one guy who will make a team come out of his zone. So he is very important to this team, and he needs to. You talking about McNamara. McNamara ran the point and could really get his own shot off a little better. And Cooney, he's gotten better off the bounce, but he's not quite there yet. And maybe next year he takes that next step, but not at this point.
There was a great Jay Billis tweet the day after saying that Notre Dame made a mistake playing a box and one on Cooney.
Yeah.
They should have had the box on Cooney instead of the one on Cooney.
That is crazy, though. I did notice they went to that box and one against them, but nothing could stop them. Running a little bit behind here, so we're going to step aside and take a quick break, a 60-second break to hear from our sponsors. Before we do, I just got one point that I wanted to bring up. Great job by the students of all game day, and probably the best thing that they did all day was not storm the court after they won, because you know what? We were supposed to win that game.
Sure.
And there's not many schools that wouldn't storm the court after a win against Duke, regardless. But so I was pleased that we didn't storm the court. It was a great day, but we took care of business like we were supposed to at home. And so with that, we're going to step aside for 60 seconds. Be right back with some great Syracuse basketball trivia.
We hold on to the things that really matter. Welcome to Generations Bank.
Hi, I'm Jody Torrio. If you're like me, you've got stuff lying around the house that you want to recycle, but you're just not sure how, like broken toasters, vacuum cleaners, or microwaves. At Seneca Meadows, we have a drop-off for those. Bring in anything with a cord, and we'll make sure it's recycled properly through our partnership with 2TRG. It's that easy.
And welcome back to the Upstate Orange podcast on FingerLakes1.tv. And this is the part of the show that Brad asks us trivia questions. And since we're running a little bit behind, Brad, let's get right to it. What do you got for us on Connor's Corner this week?
First question I have for you guys that just popped into my head as we were talking about the greatest games ever played in the Carrier Dome. I mentioned the Syracuse-Georgetown from 1990. That game was played on March 4th, 1990. Do you guys know what significant event happened on that same date in college basketball? Tragic event, as a matter of fact.
Len Bias died?
No.
That was
March
earlier than
4th,
1990. Hank Gathers.
That is correct.
Hank Gathers
died the same day of that Syracuse-Georgetown game.
Huh.
I was trying to remember some of the details of that game, and I pulled up an article in some newspaper, and there was on the one side it was talking about that Syracuse Georgetown game, on the other side it was talking about Hank Gathers dying, and it kind of blew my mind a little bit.
Huh.
But that was just a little teaser. So what I've got a couple of specific trivia questions related to the Notre Dame game the other night, and then we'll get into some rapid fire trivia. But Trevor Cooney scored 54% of his team's points in the game against Notre Dame on Monday night. When was the last time that a Syracuse player has scored more than at least 54% of his team's points in any one game?
Jerry McNamara, Brigham Young.
Incorrect.
Because that was over 50, but not 54, right?
Yeah, it was over 50, but not 54.
It was 1950, Brad.
You saw the same statistic I did.
I heard it somewhere today, but yeah, it was 1950 was the last time a Syracuse player scored a higher percentage of the total team points in one game than Trevor Cooney did on Monday night.
Right.
I don't know the player's
crazy,
name, though.
Who? That he was as dominant over the rest of his team as anybody in 60-plus years of Syracuse basketball.
Was it Billy Gabor? What was the guy's name?
It didn't even say. I don't even know. They just said it had to go back before 1950 was all it said.
Huh.
It wasn't at the Carrier Dome. I know that.
No.
It was probably at the Syracuse War Memorial.
But Dave, you answered the question that I was going to ask next, which was the last time a Syracuse player outscored the rest of his team combined. And it was Jerry McNamara in that game against BYU, where he had 43 out of his team's 80.
That was a tournament game, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was first round, 2004. So they were defending champs, first round game. The year they went to the Sweet 16, and won by 5 in the first round against BYU. I think they were a 4 seed that year, maybe.
Don't know.
3 or 4 seed. All right, guys. So shifting gears, I have a set of random facts about each player on the Syracuse basketball team. I want to see how well you guys know this year's team. So I'm going to throw out a random fact. You're going to tell me which player it's describing. Okay? It could be anyone through however many scholarship players they have.
No walk-ons.
So don't worry about the walk-ons. Okay. I'm going to give you a fact, and you throw out the player. This guy played varsity basketball in 8th grade, and in his 8th grade year started all 28 games for the state runner-up.
Trevor Cooney.
Trevor Cooney's correct. Good call.
Nice call, Vic. Was that just a total guess, or you know?
No, for some reason I remember him being highly touted as a youngster.
So now here we are, 7 years later.
School. I think that helped too.
7 years later, right? Because he redshirted one. So here we are 7 years later.
Yep.
Okay, rapid fire. What do we got?
Which player's given first name is Houston?
Oh, jeez. Ron Patterson.
Incorrect.
No idea. Tyler Ennis? Jeremy Grant?
Incorrect. Jeremy Grant is correct.
Oh, Jeremy Grant. Why did he go? Why does he go with that?
Grant brothers, there's 3 or 4 of them. All of them, they all start with J, which is all their middle names, and their first names all start with H. Bizarre. But
Houston, Jeremy Grant.
And of course, their father and uncle, Harvey and Horace, start with an H. So
that may have been it. They wanted to formally continue the H's, but wanted to get away from it.
I wonder how many Syracuse fans don't know that, because I didn't.
I never heard it. I read it in the media guide. This player's given first name is Robert.
Ron Patterson?
Incorrect.
Tyler Roberson?
Incorrect.
Oh.
Well, it's probably not Musa Kita, though.
No. C.J. Fair.
Yeah.
Incorrect.
Who does that leave us?
Cooney, Christmas. It's not Jeremy Grant. Robert Houston, Jeremy Grant.
Johnson.
B.J. Johnson.
Johnson.
Yeah. Good one.
Good call, Bert. All right. This guy's father was an All-American soccer player at Temple.
Wasn't Ennis. Seen his dad. He didn't look like a soccer player. Although.
No, not Tyler Ennis.
By Musakita.
Incorrect.
No, good, but he likes soccer, I guess.
Patterson.
Incorrect.
Who would be have a dad who was a soccer player? We know it wasn't Grant.
You said by Kita for a reason.
Raheem Christmas?
No.
I said Kita because he was from the Dark Continent.
Right. So continue along that line of thinking.
Oh, the kid from Rochester.
Incorrect.
Oh,
Actually,
Chinoso
not a bad guess,
Oboko?
but incorrect.
Chinoso?
That would have been my guess.
Michael Benajay.
Benajay.
Oh, now that you mentioned that, I did remember that. And his mother was an athlete, too, I think, of some sort.
That may be true. But she wasn't an All-American soccer player at Temple.
No.
This player was named the Gatorade New Jersey Player of the Year in 2013.
New Jersey. Tyler Ennis.
Tyler Ennis is correct. I thought I would mess you guys up and you would go with Roberson.
No.
No, that was a good call. This guy played in the 2011 McDonald's All-American game.
Christmas.
Correct. This guy wears number 35.
Tyler Roberson.
Nope.
35. Patterson.
Nope.
Johnson. Can it be him
Nope.
again?
This could potentially be a trick question. Because the reality is you've never actually seen him wear number 35.
Chinoso Oboko.
That's correct.
No, you said scholarship players. I thought you were going to slip a walk on it there, honest, but
Nope.
that's
Nope. All right. This guy was ranked in high school at number 94 in the year 2010 by Rivals.com.
CJ Fair.
Correct. Can you imagine that? He was the 94th best high school player.
And now he's the ACC Player of the Year preseason.
Right.
We do a good
This
job
guy
of that
was-
at Syracuse, getting the guys that and they over exceed their expectations coming out of high school. We do that quite a bit. Boeheim does it. I don't do it.
And then they regress and get back to high school level by the time they're done with Syracuse.
Some of them. Mookie Jones. Okay.
This guy grew up in St. Croix.
Raheem Christmas.
Good call. This guy shares a name with a Buffalo Sabre.
Ron Patterson.
Incorrect.
I only know one Buffalo Sabre. That's Ryan Miller. So
I don't know any.
Miller's incorrect.
Tyler Ennis?
Tyler Ennis is correct.
Okay.
This is the player on the Sabres named Tyler Ennis. This guy attended the same high school as Carmelo Anthony.
CJ Fair.
yeah, Dunbar.
Incorrect.
Dante Green. It's not
yes,
fair,
correct,
huh?
but No. Not what I'm looking for.
Is it Roberson?
No.
No.
Patterson's from Indiana.
Right.
Yeah.
The problem you're running into is Carmelo Anthony attended two different high schools.
Oh, prep school. And did he?
Tyler Ennis.
Incorrect.
Jeremy Grant.
Incorrect.
It's Patterson.
Oh,
Incorrect.
no.
Carmelo Anthony went to Oak Hill Academy for his senior year.
That's right. Who do we got now that went to Oak Hill?
So who we got now who went to Oak Hill?
B.J. Johnson?
Nope. By Kita.
He went to Oak Hill?
For 2 years, as a matter of fact.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't know.
This guy was the 2012 New York State Mr. Basketball.
2012? Not Matt Verkey.
That would
Oh,
be Chinoko Oboko.
No, incorrect.
In 2012, New York State Mr. Basketball.
Benajay.
Incorrect.
New York State. He's got to be a New York State recruit.
Must not play much.
Not anymore, he doesn't.
Oh, Duane Coleman.
Yeah, good call, Brad. We forgot about him.
Yeah.
By the way, if you're
Still on the
listening,
team.
if you're listening live, you can hop on the chat room at fingerlakes1.tv and get involved in this trivia. I just got a text from one of our buddies here. He says that Horace Grant's middle name is Junior. So
That could be it.
But
It
yeah.
could have some relevance.
But we do monitor the chat room on the show, so if you want to get involved in the trivia, fingerlakes1.tv, the chat room's right below the video player. So go ahead, Brad, go on.
This guy was a state player of the year in high school as a freshman.
Which state?
Trevor Cooney.
That would give it away.
Yeah, Cooney.
Cooney is incorrect.
The state would give it away, huh? Patterson.
Incorrect.
Ennis.
Coleman.
No.
Incorrect and incorrect.
It wasn't Grant.
I hope you grade on a curve.
Better give us this one, Brad.
Christmas?
Benajay. You guys need to study up on Michael Benajay. You don't have your Michael Benajay trivia down yet. Michael Benajay was Virginia State Player of the Year as a freshman.
I can spell his name.
Vacation he played in.
That takes a lot.
This guy's career high in assists is 1.
Career high, huh? Michael Benajay.
Incorrect.
Kita.
That was my first thought. Was
Vikita is correct.
wow? I thought he must
He's
have
got
had a
one anyway.
game with 2 assists somewhere.
1 assist.
Jeez.
He missed a few
let's see.
chippies the other night.
But what state is Ron Patterson from?
Indiana.
Okay, that was the easy part. The hard part is, who was the last Syracuse player from Indiana prior to Ron Patterson?
Indiana.
Indiana wants me, but I can't go back there.
I don't remember any recruits from Indiana.
There's only one in the Boeheim era, I'll give you that.
Is it early Boeheim era?
Not exactly.
90s?
Yeah. No, 2000. No, the early 2000s.
Early 2000s
You
even.
recruited him in the 90s, probably, you could say, but
May have been on that championship team.
he may have been, Dave.
The
Jeremy McNeil was from Texas. Billy Edelin.
Who was the other guard?
yeah, the big guard with the crazy name.
Keep talking. Keep talking.
Marius Janulis?
No,
No, that was
Oh, that was 90-60. Or that's Sapola. From New Jersey.
he's black.
Queth
Queth.
Thwaney. Queth
yeah.
Thwaney, yeah.
Quest Twain is correct, from Bloomington, Indiana.
good teamwork
With
there
Syracuse, I have no
on
idea,
our
but-
part.
And we're getting late, so that's all I got. I could give you guys a lot more, but that's all I got.
No, that was a nice run through.
I want to correct one thing. Vikita had 2 assists in a game 3 times this year. Prior to this year, his career high was 1 assist. So I regret that mistake.
Well, something I learned earlier this evening was Patterson went to the same high school and broke the scoring records of the current New York Knicks coach, Mike Woodson.
Oh, no kidding.
And there was another pro that went there too, but I forgot his name already.
Well, I like Patterson. I'm looking forward to next year. But a little something going on this year, which brings me to our list of the week. And this week on the list, we're going to we're going to look at Syracuse's remaining schedule. And what I want from you guys, and we're going to do this quickly, is I want a percentage and the chance that we're going to lose one of these games. And when you give me a percentage that's over 50%, you're out for the rest of the list, because we're looking for the first time Syracuse is going to lose. So if you say 51% chance Syracuse loses this game, then that's basically predicting a Syracuse loss. And anything less, then we can continue. And so let's kick it off right now. This Sunday, February 9th, 6 o'clock, Clemson comes to the Dome. I'm telling you that I'm a little worried about this game. Clemson's going to pack it in just like Notre Dame did. Clemson has a big guy who's a pretty good scorer, so potentially I could see foul trouble setting in. but still, I give it 20. I give it 15%. 15%. How about you guys?
20%.
I agree, but
10.
20. Brad goes 10. Okay, so it looks like we're getting by Clemson. Of course, any game that you play in college basketball is your chance you can lose against anybody.
40.
Yeah, I'm gonna go 35, even lower. Pitt's not looking too good lately, guys. But that certainly is a candidate.
I looked at the clock and picked the number from that. Because I want to root for Syracuse every game, obviously.
Sure, but, it's kind of ridiculous to think that we wouldn't lose a game, right? But let's move ahead then. Dave, you're out. You got them losing at Pitt. So we got this undefeated streak going forward to February 15th when we play North Carolina State in the Dome, 3 o'clock. Anybody guys losing that one? What's your percentage on that one, Brad and Verk?
10.
20.
Yeah, I'll go right between you with 15. And then Boston College comes to the Dome. I got 6-row seats for that one. I don't know if you guys knew that. Boston College tickets a little easier to get than Duke tickets. But
5%.
Yeah, I'm going 5% at home too. 5. Verk,
15.
15. I think like the Eagles. Likes Tom Donahue. Okay, here we go. We might lose somebody here. Saturday, February 22nd, 6 o'clock at Duke in Cameron. Verk.
60%.
60, they're out. They're losing at Duke. Brad?
65.
65, they're out. You guys are out. Guess what? 45 for me. We're going to beat Duke in Cameron. It's going to be
What's
easy.
Kevin, what would he predict on that?
Well, he probably would predict a Duke win, but he's pretty reasonable. He predicted a Syracuse win when they came to the Dome. But, I personally think we're going to do okay in Cameron. I think we got nothing to lose anymore. So I think we're going to go in there kind of loose, and I think we're going to enjoy the atmosphere. If we had lost in the Dome, I would have been really scared about going in there. But we got nothing to lose. As a matter of fact, at that point, if we can take care of business and maybe somebody beat Virginia, we might be, 2 games clear, so we might not even have to worry about the ACC standings in that one. So you guys are out. I got us winning. I got us going at Maryland. That's a tough game. I'll go 30% there. And then we go at Virginia. Oh, man, this, a lot of people don't realize that we're only 1 game clear of Virginia in the ACC standings. And Virginia's got an easy schedule coming out. We're their toughest game. We got a difficult schedule. At Virginia, that one scares me, but only to the tune of 40%. And then Georgia Tech in the Dome, 15. Let's go 7%. And then at Florida State on Sunday, March 9th, I'm going 35, 30. I'm going to go 38%. So I got them winning out if we go by percentages. But, if you're going with those percentages I just mentioned, then somewhere along the line we could easily trip up. But I see us as favorites in every one of those games. The Vegas line favorite probably not at Duke, but I like our chances to win at Duke. So that's the remaining schedule, guys. Pretty tough. As far as what we've faced so far in the ACC, I think it gets tougher now.
I would say that's not nearly as tough as what we've seen the last few years in the Big East Conference.
Oh, no doubt. I agree with you there. I mean, how many ranked teams are in there right now? We got Duke's ranked, and
Duke and Virginia.
And Pitt is hanging on barely to a top 25 ranking. So you're right. Nothing like the gauntlet that used to be, playing like 6 ranked teams out of 8 games, and 2 or 3 of them top 10.
As long as they don't lose the final game they play, we'll be happy.
Yeah, that would be nice. And
that's why, guys, it'll be hard, depending on how the season plays out, to compare this team to the 2012 team, the 2010 team, some of these really, really good teams in recent history. It'll almost be apples to oranges to try and compare these teams.
I agree.
Well, let's compare some teams from around the country with our power rankings. This is we're just going to quickly give our top 5 here in the country as we see it, and this has been very fluid, to say the least, this year. I got Villanova 5. I got Florida 4, Wichita State 3, San Diego State 2, one of the best teams in the country that nobody seems to be talking about. And then I got the Cuse at number 1, of course. And how about you guys? What's your top 5? Bert?
I got Florida 5, Wichita State 4, San Diego State 3, Arizona 2. You dropped Arizona right out of your top 5, huh?
Yeah, well, they hurt. Their best
Syracuse
player
won.
got hurt.
Second best player.
Second best player, but one of their
Lead
top
scorer.
players got hurt, and they lost, to Cal.
Brad probably has that game on with the sound off right now. They were jumped off to an early lead tonight.
Zona did tonight?
Yeah, but it was very early. When
That's funny you say that, Dave, because I've been tracking it on the computer this entire podcast. Oregon's up 4 with 6 minutes left.
How about that?
Yeah, well, Arizona's not the same team losing. I can't even think of the guy's name. But then I watched Cal look absolutely terrible last night against Stanford. Yeah, Stanford beat him. Bill Walton called the game. Bill Walton, I think, is losing his mind. He was like reading song lyrics. during that game.
I'm so glad he's healthy enough to be doing games again, though, because he was in a dire situation. I'm not going to give you a 5 other than Syracuse 1.
Like
let's throw Michigan number 5.
Oh, you like Michigan? I'm on the top of the Big Ten, so you got to be doing something right if you're the Wolverines. Brad, how about your power rankings?
I have Villanova 5, San Diego State 4. I still have Arizona 3. I was going to have them 4, but I figured, well, they beat San Diego State, so they should be ahead of them. So I got Arizona 3. I have Florida 2. That's a scary, scary team right now. And, Jim, you've always had the test of, if they played right now, would you think Syracuse would beat them when Syracuse and Arizona were 1-2, and it would be hard to disagree. Right now, if Syracuse played Florida, I'm not sure Syracuse wins that game. Florida's tough.
They've been looking
got
good.
Their 6'10" freshman back, and I would hope that they don't see them in the tournament. But number 1, finally, I have Syracuse.
That's good to hear. Finally, we got Brad to come around. It took Arizona losing, but hey, quickly before we move on to the next segment, got a question from the chat room. Billy in the chat room wants to know what team has won the most games against ranked teams over the past 4 years, and you know what? I think that we all know the answer to that one, right?
Syracuse.
It's got to be. It's got to be. I'm waiting for him to see if we got it right, but I'm pretty sure it's Syracuse.
Team with the most wins over.
Well, that's just maybe Michigan State because there's as many ranked teams in the Big Ten.
Yeah, but we're going the past 4 years. Think of all the ranked teams in the Big East that we beat.
True.
I think it's got to be Syracuse.
If it wasn't Syracuse, I would say Michigan State.
Yeah, but that's a good
Maybe Louisville.
guess for second. Yeah, Louisville too, another Big East team that won a lot of games. But well, we'll wait and see if Billy gives us the answer. If not, we're just going to have to look it up on our own. Bold prediction time, fellas, as we're coming up on 10:58 Eastern Standard Time, and this is a part of the show where we make a bold prediction. And last week, I predicted Syracuse beat Duke by 18 points or more. I was wrong. I think they were on track, like you said, Berkeley. They had a lead, and then Thornton came in and kind of ruined my
I don't think
vision.
they were win by 18, though.
Oh, I think they might have just kept rolling at that point if it wasn't for Thornton. Brad, you said Christmas and Keita would both foul out of the Duke game. Incorrect. Verk said Tyler Ennis would hit a buzzer beater. Incorrect, although if Hood's dunk goes in, maybe he does.
Yeah.
He didn't have the opportunity. It was a close game, so I guess you were the closest. Dave, a couple weeks ago, you were here. You said Michael Benajay would be the hero of a conference game. Hasn't happened yet?
If they're going to make the run in the tournament, is what I meant to indicate. Benajay will have to have a big game.
So some point between now and when Syracuse wins the national championship.
Correct.
It'll be Benajay that keeps it alive.
One of the heroes.
All right, I like that. So let's go to this week. I'll start out. Christmas, Raheem Christmas. Back-to-back double-figure scoring games. And that's not going to be easy against Clemson because they're going to pack it in. But I think that Rack has turned a corner, and we're going to start going to him even more than we have been recently. And he's going to have 2 double-digit scoring games back-to-back. Verk?
Cooney hits less than 30% of his threes in the next 2 games.
Okay, fair enough. I could see that. That would not be good.
Yeah, no.
You know.
I don't know if it's that bold either, but it's a prediction.
It's kind of bold.
Coming off a 9 3-pointer game, I think he's going to, mellow out here.
Dave, got a bold prediction?
Denver only scores 8 points in the Super Bowl.
That would have been a good one last week.
One easy prediction is a solid win against Clemson, but Syracuse does so scoring 55 points or fewer.
Okay. 55 points or fewer against Clemson. We're going to win.
Correct.
Wow. Well, that'll be good.
And actually, even though I picked us the 52% for Pittsburgh, I'm still thinking, we can win that game pretty convincingly.
Sure. Brad.
I think Syracuse is going to go down to the Pete next Wednesday and beat the Pitt Panthers by more than 15 points.
What makes you think that?
Because I think without Lamar Patterson's heroics in the Dome, they would have gotten blown out in the Dome. And I just think Syracuse is a significantly better team, top to bottom.
I kind of agree with you there. I kind of agree with you about that. Yeah, I'm not really too scared about heading down there to the Pete as I have been in the past. Now, this could be a shock. They might beat us, and that would reinstill the old fear. But we've kind of broken that curse, I think, if you want to even call it a curse.
This isn't it's a good Pittsburgh team. It's not one of the better ones in the past 10 years.
Yeah, no doubt about that. No doubt about that.
Right.
All right, guys, getting late. It's time for 2 for the road, and the first for the road is simple question: is Jeremy Grant underrated? I mean, we're 22-0, and I think Jeremy Grant's a huge, huge part. We hear about Tyler Ennis, we hear about Fair, and sure, we do hear about Grant, but I just seeing the plays that Grant made against Duke, offensively and defensively, he's the best rebounder on the team. Is Jeremy Grant's role in this Syracuse team's success, are we underrating it?
I don't think so, because he's considered the best, most athletic player on the team with ceiling, a very high ceiling, unlimited potential, and fun to watch. If anything, I'd say C.J. Fair may be underrated because he's so consistent and sometimes blends in with being solid and not spectacular.
How about you, Burke? Is Grant underrated?
I don't think so. He's high. He's a first-round pick on most draft boards. He gets pretty good national attention. They always talk about his shot blocks and stuff like that. I'd like to see a little bit more of some consistency from him. Duke was kind of a breakout game for him. Then he came back and didn't do much against Notre Dame. He needs to knock down consistently from his jump shot. He's got all the tools. He just needs to continue to progress and really start knocking down some jump shots. He forces it a lot. He's still developing. I think he's they got him right where he should be.
Brad, Grant underrated, overrated?
No, I think he's properly rated. He's been lauded for his potential, and I think that's accurate. I think that potential is nowhere close to being realized yet. He's obviously an NBA guy, and people talk about that. And that's really the first thing they talk about, and just a freakish athleticism. But I don't think he's ever going to be the first guy that an opponent tries to scheme for. I think they're always going to approach him as probably the third option on this team at best, and I think that's appropriate.
Okay, fair enough. Hey, got an answer on that trivia question. The answer, with 18 wins over ranked teams over the past 4 years, is the Georgetown Hoyas.
Really?
Wow. Not too many of them this year.
Yeah, no.
No.
They got one the other night, though, Michigan State.
Yeah, they're turning around, and that counts, yeah. So, again, I'm not surprised it was a Big East team, but a little surprised it was Georgetown. But, they entered the NCAA tournament as a team that a lot of people were picking to go Final Four a couple of years in the past, in the past 4.
Florida Gulf Coast, was that?
That's right, yeah. They're getting to be like Pittsburgh in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
So, all right, guys, last one for the road before we head out of here. I need your Clemson prediction. I'll go first. Syracuse, it's going to be low scoring. I agree with you, Dave. I'm going to go Syracuse 63, Clemson 44.
Well, first, go ahead, Matt.
I'll go 62 56. Syracuse.
Close one, huh?
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
Syracuse will pull it out in the end like they do.
Kind of like Notre Dame game, but maybe a little tighter.
Well, first, we're talking numbers. I'd like to thank you for having me in here tonight. It's
Absolutely.
20 degrees warmer than the last time. It was 9 degrees as I pulled into the parking lot versus minus 11 when I went home the last time.
Oh, it's balmy tonight.
Yeah. But let's go 55-43, Cuse.
Nice defensive game holding them to 43.
They have a poor offense, Clemson.
Yeah. Yeah, and we have a good defense. I don't know if you guys have heard. Brad?
Syracuse 64, Clemson 49. Clemson is 331st in the country in points per game. It's pretty pathetic. And if they're doing that against a defense that they can actually figure out, what are they going to do against the zone? They might not even get 40 guys.
They beat
Well,
Duke.
that would be nice. Yeah, they did beat Duke. Isn't that kind of crazy? I mean, as good as Duke looked
It
against...
was at home, obviously, and Duke was struggling back then, but they did beat them.
Well, anybody can beat anybody. Let's hope
right.
that doesn't happen. Any parting shots, Brad?
Big game happening in my town tonight. Cincinnati beat UConn to 15th straight victory. Look out for the Bearcats.
I thought about putting them in my top
them this
5
season.
instead of Villanova, but I probably would have if I had known that result, although UConn is probably heading for the NIT. Would you say, Brad?
Well, they're ranked.
Yeah, they're borderline. They're 22nd, I think, in the country. So
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, I mean, the American, if they can be 3rd or 4th in the American, which I think they can. I think UConn's in.
Oh, boy, if you're a UConn fan, you don't like hearing that phrase. If they can be 3rd or 4th in the
They
American,
beat who? They beat. They beat. They got a big non-conference win.
early on, they beat
Was it
somebody.
Kansas or they beat somebody pretty good.
Lost
early.
to SMU.
Florida? Was it Florida?
Yeah, they
maybe?
did. They beat Florida.
That's a really nice
UConn.
win.
Yeah.
That's a really nice win. All right, guys. Dave, thank you again for joining us in studio. Always a pleasure.
My pleasure as well. And I have to, as a parting shot, Jabari Parker, even though he fouled out and maybe his stat line didn't look that great, he certainly is impressive in person, especially.
Instant
He's
NBA
tough.
superstar. He's the type of guy, he's going to be leading his team in the NBA somewhere
I agree.
next year, which is why I think Duke may be struggling coming up here in the future because they're not used to having these NBA guys
Well,
one and dones. Rodney Hood's gone too, right?
I don't know. They got top number 1 class coming in. Four guys in the top 20.
How many of them will be gone in the NBA 2 years from now?
Yeah. 2. Maybe. We'll see.
I just think that Boeheim's got the sweet spot as far as that's concerned. Getting a few guys, we're losing guys too, but we also got 4-year players like C.J. Fair.
What's the talk on Ennis? Is he going to be back for another year? Or
I don't know. I mean,
You talk about that. We lose Ennis, Grant, and Fair. Things might not be that great for us either.
we thought that last year too, but you're right.
Yeah.
You're right. We don't.
We don't have a class like Duke's coming in.
No, but even last year's class, we didn't think Ennis was as good
No,
as he was
that-
going to be. And
You never know.
but all right, fellas, I've enjoyed it. Always great talking about Syracuse hoops, especially the week after we beat Duke and it's sent to number 1 in the country. 2 more games this week before we get back together next Thursday night. So thanks again for joining us on the Upstate Orange podcast. You can subscribe to our feed at on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, or via RSS. We're online at podcast.fingerlakes1.com/upstatehoops. We'll be back again live next Thursday at 10 o'clock Eastern Time. For my co-hosts, Brad Verkey, Dave Barnick, our Brad Connor, Matt Verkey, and our producer Jeremy Hunt, who's sick tonight, I'm Jim Sinacropi. Let's go Orange.